Hello everyone and welcome back to another technical Unobtained episode. This is a series in which we try and check out many different discontinued technical features and also normal discontinued features in Minecraft, which are features that are removed in newer versions but do exist in older versions. So today we're still in 1.12.2 because the features we will be checking out today are removed in newer versions such as 1.13, which is the next version. So we'll be checking out a way to break Bedrock on large scales, and we'll also be doing some RNG manipulation for some farming, which is a form of a technical discontinued feature. So let's take a look. The first thing I did was mainly try and clean up the big chest monster I had over here, because there were just a bunch of random large chests here with items organized completely randomly. So what I did here was basically create another chest monster, but this time organized. So as you can see here we have end related items, and then here we have mob items, and I have an absolute ton of stone type related items. So this cleaning up really helped to make this episode, because before it was just searching through a billion chests, which was a lot of effort. After I was done cleaning up those chests, I decided to make a big map art of, just a big map of our world, because I didn't have one yet. So what you can see here, this gray is actually the void. This is the void perimeter we have around spawn, and then this gray is all of the stone over here at the main base area. Then we have here a desert in which the biome changed to a snow biome, so there's a bunch of snow over there. And then this is a bugged mesa that generated without terracotta in a particular version. But at some point I started actually running out of leather, and while I did already have a passive mob farm, this passive mob farm also was pretty small and also produced rabbits and stuff which aren't that useful for getting leather. So I decided to go to a mushroom island biome and create a perimeter over there, so I could get more leather. Let's see how that went. Now, as we all know, Mushroom Island biomes spawn with a lot of mycelium and also some grass at the edges. And the problem with this is that, of course, these mushrooms can spawn on all grass type blocks and mycelium. So what we need to do is take out all of these blocks so that all mob spawning will be concentrated in our farm. And if we really want to make a big effort, we can remove all of the blocks down to the lowest block in the world, and that will increase spawning speeds by a bit, because when a mob is spawned, you have these sub-chunks, and the game iterates over these sub-chunks to spawn mobs. So the less sub-chunks you have, the less sub-chunks are iterated over, and the faster mobs are spawned. So we ideally want to create a perimeter, but the problem is these Mushroom Island biomes spawn in oceans. So what we need to do for a perimeter, we want to use a world eater, and these world eaters, they need trenches on the side. So you'd need to fill in all of this ocean all the way. For example, using sand or some sponges or something like that, and then take out some sand and take it out all the way to the bottom of the world in order to get these trenches, and you'd need to do this on all four sides. And only then can you start building your world eater flying machine contraption, which would bomb down this entire mushroom island to get your nice perimeter. So in 1.12 there is actually a very nice convenient way we can use to create these sand bridges in the water, which I'll show right now. In order to get this sand filling contraption to work, we actually need to activate instant tile tick. So this is a contraption that I've shown before, and we activate it by breaking this block, and then all of the tile ticks will be instant. So now it's normal, but if we break this block, reset the contraption also, we can see the repeaters activate instantly now. And this also means that sand falls instantly, and also dragon eggs can break blocks when they fall on them, including bedrock. So the sandstone that was here also disappeared. So let's now go to the sand contraption. So this contraption over here is a sand duping flying machine, which you can use to fill in water areas. So if I activate it, okay, if I activate it, you can see that it actually starts duplicating sand, and it does this without any immovable parts. So it can just move along, and if this row here fills up with sand, it will actually move the next block over if I build it correctly. And that way you can fill in a 12 wide area with sand. And for perimeter, for World Eater, you need a bit more, you need a bit wider trench on some sides, and then you just run 2 or 3 of these to create the trench size you want with the sand. So as you can see in this old backup of the world, you can see that I have done all of this with these little flying machine contraptions, and they've built a pretty thick wall of sand here in the middle of the ocean. And then I used some TNT bombing flying machines to dig it all out, and then pretty much most of the work done in these trenches is that I needed to remove all of the lava, which I probably should have done earlier, because as you can see here it creates some obsidian which I'll have to manually mine out when the World Eater is running. And after that I also built this World Eater here. This was put together by XCOM 6000, and this is a kind of special World Eater. It's a 536 by 536 perimeter hole it creates, but it has this special feature that when a sweeper module, which aren't on this side, I now realize, by the way, essentially how a World Eater works is that it has these, on the top it has these bombing flying machines which drop TNT down using TNT duplication, and then it blows up the top layer of what's left of the terrain. And then these sweepers come in behind a little bit, and they run over all of the liquids, and they break all of the liquids, so that water over here is not really a problem because it gets removed by these sweepers. But whenever there's an unbreakable block such as obsidian, these sweepers can get stuck on them, and if the World Eater then continues running, it essentially breaks everything. So what this World Eater design has is this big AND gate at the back here, which essentially checks whether or not all of the sweepers are back, and only if they're all in the back here, so none of them got stuck, it allows the World Eater to continue moving. And on the map here, this is a decent view of what's going on here. You can see all of the trenches over here. The side trenches can be a bit narrower than the main trenches, and this thing in the middle here is for placing some bots which I use to load the area. So that's essentially just alt accounts which safely load the entire World Eater area so that the World Eater doesn't break. Over here you can see some of the machines I used to bomb these trenches down, but I had to remove the TNT duplicators for another trencher over there. And this over here I thought was funny to try out is an Myron showed this in one of his older videos, that you can create a contraption that breaks obsidian without needing to mine it, and it turns it into item form. Now when you finish running your World Eater, essentially what you're left with is this, a lot of bedrock everywhere. And the problem with this is, for the particular RNG manipulation contraption I want to build, you actually needed to remove all of the lava, and sometimes you get this very sneaky lava which is in between a bunch of bedrock. So what I need to do was also remove all of this bedrock, and this is where dragon eggs actually come in. Because as I showed before, on instant falling, these dragon eggs can break bedrock. Now, as you can see here, I already broke all of the bedrock, but there is a problem with the dragon egg instant fall breaking. First of all, you need like a nice contraption that moves the player around in order to break all of the bedrock, and that was designed by T1. He's a technical Minecraft player who also plays 1.12, and he designed this contraption, which uses a lot of observers and stuff to create a three-way flying machine which moves back and forth and then over to the next layer, and then you can remove 5 layers of bedrock at a time. But the problem with this is that on instance falling, dragon eggs don't actually break the final layer of bedrock, so they can only break these few layers, and this contraption actually relies on observers and stuff behaving normally, which they don't when instant falling is on, or they don't when instant tile tick is on. So there's a distinction. You have these two things called instant falling and instant tile tick, and these are better explained in Myron's video about I think it's called population suppression exploits. Essentially, these are different, and I've used a similar contraption like this before in the Nether, and back then I didn't need to build any new contraption. I could just use my instant tile tick contraption because instant tile tick only happens in one dimension, so my instant tile tick contraption is in the overworld, so instant tile tick didn't get turned on in the Nether, but it did turn on instant falling because instant falling is a global flag that goes over all dimensions. So now I needed to create a contraption that only enabled instant falling but not instant tile tick, so I could use observers normally, but the dragon eggs would still fall instantly, which we'll take a look at now. So now I'll enable instant falling only, and as you can see, I wrote down some very specific instructions here because this is actually pretty different from how the instant tile tick contraption works, because this contraption pre-save state stuff before, because this is a bit of a simpler contraption I built. So let's do this. Now we'll wait for an autosave to occur, and then we can just break this block and hit the lever, and then so instant falling isn't on yet, as you can see. How this contraption works is it actually update suppresses the placement of a dungeon in the world, because dungeons don't enable instant tile tick, but they do enable instant falling. So we need to wait for the autosave still, and then this contraption should work. So this, and then reset it. Now as you can see, the sand is instant falling, but if we were to get something that works on tile ticks, and I don't have my redstone box with me, it wouldn't work instantly, which is the important part. And now I can also show you that dragon eggs don't break Y0 bedrock. So now we're here in the end, and as you can see, this block is at Y0, but this one isn't. So if we do this, the block is broken. But if we do this, the egg disappears entirely and it can't break the iron block, which is a problem because of course we also want to break the Y0 bedrock for multiple reasons, mainly that in 1.18 the Y0 bedrock gets replaced with the new underground terrain, and I'd rather have that my perimeter I built actually keeps working past 1.18. So luckily for us, there are other methods in 1.12 to break Y0 bedrock, and all of them involve using pistons. But the important thing is that these pistons need to become headless, and there are different ways to do this, and most often you use TNT to break the piston heads. And then these pistons can break the last layer of bedrock. But Desu designed a contraption that could be used to break the piston heads using Dragon Eggs. So essentially using Dragon Eggs to also break the last layer of Bedrock, and that way we didn't need TNT duping. And I slightly modified his machine to use a player which places the Dragon Eggs like this on this glazed terracotta instead of using a very big floor of leaves with Dragon Eggs on top in order to break the bedrock, because then I'd need to build a 500 by 500 area of leaves and then put Dragon Eggs on top, which seemed like a lot of work, and just AFKing using a bot or a player is much easier. So I slightly modified the design to use a player, and I'll probably put up a world download for that somewhere. As you can see here, we have a complete void perimeter over here, which is very large. If you stand in the center, you can only barely just see the edges. The center is somewhere over here. It's not that precise. So somewhere here, center is a bit more over there, I think. And now I have this complete void perimeter in which also no random ticks happen. And that's actually useful for that contraption. So what I then want to do is do something useful with this perimeter, because over here is the mushroom biome, and as you can see in the top left, it says that there is a mushroom island biome over here. And I already collected more than enough leather, just placed some mycelium over there. So instead what I decided to do is actually create a mob head farm. So what do you need for mob heads? Well, you mainly need thunder, and that thunder then strikes a creeper, so it becomes charged creeper, and each charged creeper, when blowing up another mob, drops one single skull. So using one charged creeper, you can always only get one skull there. It's hard coded to do this. So well, it almost never thunders in the world. It's like 3% of the time it thunders, I think. Yeah, it's just becoming night, it's not thundering. So that's a problem. And then another thing is that lightning almost never strikes, so it's still very rare. And that's where we've got RNG manipulation for. So let's head over to the RNG manipulation grids. So now we're over here at my ender pearl cannon, which is definitely useful for these kinds of things, because you need to move thousands of blocks in nether, which still takes quite a long time even using nether travel. And I have two positions here, so one for the thunder RNG grid and one for the lightning grid. So we have one position in the world which RNG manipulates for creating thunder, and then we have one position for lightning. So let's first go over to the lightning grid. This still has ender pearls. Let's see. This is always kind of laggy because of the large amount of TNT. And now if we look at our coordinates, you can see we teleported very far in just an instant. And there's the portal, which goes to the thunder grid. And this is actually in a very special position in the world. So in order to find this position, you usually use a tool which was mainly designed by Earth Computer. So in order to understand what we will be RNG manipulating, we first need to understand how the weather works. So first of all, when you sleep, it always becomes clear weather afterwards. So for example, you can sleep during thunder and then the weather becomes clear after. And how this works internally is the rain timer and the thunder timer, which are internal timers that always tick down to 0, are both set to 0, and the rain and thunder are set to false. And then the very next time these weather timers are ticked, a new number for the thunder time is generated, and then for the rain time is generated, which means this is the amount of time it waits before thundering is set to true again, and then this is the amount of time it waits before setting rain to true. And after one of these timers is set to 0, then it will become true. So for example, the thunder thing is set to true, and then it will randomly generate a new time. So what we want to do is we want to have it thunder as often as possible and as long as possible. So what we need to do, this timer for how long it essentially stays clear needs to be as small as possible, and it needs to then be followed up by making this be as long as possible, so it stays thunder for as long as possible. And we can do this using RNG manipulation, because when you load a chunk in a world, the RNG, the Minecraft RNG, world RNG is set to a particular number, and then the next time that RNG is called, you get a very you get a predictable number, so you can predict what this number will be, or what this number will be for how long it stays clear or stays raining. And this number is the same for an 80 by 80 chunk sized area. So 80 by 80 chunks, all of those chunks will reset the RNG to the same number and will give the same thunder off time, for example. And the problem is with this is these two are actually linked. So if this number is smaller, what we want, because that means it is the weather is clear for a shorter amount of time, then this number also gets smaller. So what we need to do is take two separate regions, use one for making the clear time as short as possible, and then use a different 80 by 80 chunk region to make the on time be as long as possible. And why is the rain at all important here is because it only actually thunders when both the thunder thing is set to true, the thunder variable, and the rain boolean is set to true. So both, it needs to essentially be thundering and raining at the same time, and only then do you actually see thunder, because when only thunder is set to true, it is just clear weather. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to find these regions in which we need to load chunks which reset these numbers properly? Well, Earth Computer actually made a program for this over here. You can enter your seed, and then you can select how long you want the thunder to be on or off. But the problem with this is this only manipulates one particular thing. So you can do thunder and rain both, but you can't do the on and the off time, which is logical because then the regions need to be linked. But if you do this separately, so you go and generate the on time and then the off time separately, you can find regions that are very far away from each other, which is of course not what you want, because then you need to send signals through the nether or something to actually get this stuff to line up properly. So instead, what I decided to do is to write a new program over here, and I called this weather complete, and this is a selection box for maximizing thundering percentage. So when we do this search and go to the output, you can see all of these numbers over here. Essentially, these are the coordinates of the chunks you can load, and then this is just a whole slew of text which has to do with how long it's actually thundering. So this thundering percentage here is the most clear. This is essentially the percentage of time total that it can be thundering when using this configuration. So using this, you can change the 3% thundering time into 40% thundering time. So 40% of the time it will be thundering when using this. And that's shown by all of these durations, like rain off duration, rain on duration, and thunder onset tick. So this is, for example, the tick it will start thundering. But with this version, there is actually a problem, and you can see that problem right here. It essentially asymptotes toward this 0.3939 value. And you can see this thundering onset tick actually becomes higher. So what's happening is it is starting to take longer before it starts thundering. Now, why is this happening? Well, that's because of the linking I talked about before. This program only manipulates for thundering times for regions that are actually next to each other. So I rewrote this program to find regions that are next to each other instead of using regions, just a single region to manipulate both the thundering on and off time. So this is the weather multi-region manipulator I built. And essentially what this does is it finds two regions right next to each other, which allows you to get the highest thundering percentage. So as you can see here, we have percentages of up to 55%, and that's somewhere close to the actual possible percentage, because the shortest that the rain off duration and the thunder off duration can be is something like 12,000, I think, and then the longest on duration that you can have is 13,000 or something. And what it shows here is the region in which the initial manipulation has to be done, and then the direction the second region is in. So for example, minus x or positive x. And our coordinates are around x 122,000, so it should be somewhere in here. Oh, that's this one. So this position gives us a thundering percentage of a bit over 51%. So how does this actually work now? Well, we can check with the chunk debug view. If we flick this lever, we can see this 505 area here is loaded, which means that this chunk over here has two chunks around it in all directions which are loaded, which makes this chunk actually entity processing. And the next time an autosave rolls around, like just a few seconds ago, then these surrounding chunks are all unloaded, but this one isn't because there is a hopper inside. And then this chunk realizes, oh, I'm no longer entity processing using entity-based loading detector, and then it starts loading this grid over here. What's important about this is these first few chunks are all in one region, and all of these other chunks are in a different region. So in the first few ticks over here, we have this thing that manipulates for a very short thundering time, and then over here we have a manipulation for a very long thundering time, which is the second thing we want. So when we sleep over here, which needs to be done at a particular time before or after an autosave, then the thunder and rain timers are both set to false, and then because chunks here are being loaded, the next timers for these, so essentially the clear timers, are set to very short times, and then after they run out, they'll always be in this part of the cycle, which is something I calculated, and then they're set to true with a very long timer, so you get this 51% here. So let me wait until it's night and we can check it out. So now it's actually night and we can sleep. Well, sleep right now because it's the timer is perfect now. And then we can see in the chat here, this debug thing prints whenever there is a thunder or rain change. This thunder timer is 13,000 and the rain is 12,000, just like our program predicted. And these are very short times. And then after they run over to 0, then the next timer will occur, and then it will actually start thundering. So let's wait for until that is. Oh, another useful thing we can actually do while we wait is enable the lightning grid, so it instantly also properly starts with lightning when it starts thundering. So let's use the pearl cannon to get there. And I've shown this particular grid in an earlier episode, I believe. Also a bit laggy, of course. So now we're over here. And then if we go through this portal, we'll be going to this loading grid. I'm pretty sure it instantly starts. Well, maybe not. Doesn't seem to be. Okay, so now it started, and these are repeater lines. This is another important thing about the RNG manipulation. This RNG manipulation is happening on repeaters, and the other RNG manipulation we're using doesn't happen on repeaters but on chests, because otherwise these manipulations would of course interfere with each other. But the important thing we have now is we have these are running on repeaters, which happens in a particular part of the tick just before lightning is generated. And then we also have another part of the tick is when chests and tile entities happen. And that's when the other, that's when just before the weather is actually calculated. So while waiting for it to start thundering, let's also take a look at these things over here. These are designed by JKM. I got the schematic from him. And essentially what they are, it's very simple. Over here we have these trapdoors, which only allow creepers to spawn. And it's just a mob farm. This is creepers. And the creepers are run over here, and in this chunk a bunch of lightning will strike, and whenever it strikes this glass, these creepers below also become charged, and they go through this water in order to stop actually being on fire, which is problematic. And then they go through the nether portal, of course, and this is a general mob farm. This just works on a clock, so if I quickly enable it, we can take a look at it. All of the mobs that spawn are funneled down and into this conveyor and then are sent over to the nether, which is of course important for a farm like this because you need the mobs to actually stay alive in order to get their skulls. So whenever this timer, this is the thunder timer, which is the latest one, and it's actually analogous to this timer over here because when you sleep, the daytime is reset to 0. So this 13,000 number here, when it becomes 13,000 over here, it should start thundering. So let's wait for that. So now we're any second before it starts raining at 12,007 or something. Yep. So the rain is set to true for a time of 22,000. So that's way longer than thunder can be enabled. So that doesn't really matter. It just needs to be longer than thunder, and I've disabled rain effects here, as you can see, so only the sky color changes, but there's no rain, which is horrible for the bitrate. And then if we wait a bit longer until 13,074, it will also start thundering, and it should also instantly start the lightning because this grid is actually loading properly. So let's wait for that. 13,000. 74. So now thunder is set to true for this amount of time, and you can also see the lightning is actually striking. I have my sound turned off for weather completely because it's incredibly loud if you want to hear. Well, that was enough of that already. So now if we enable these mob farms, we will get charged creepers going into the nether. So let's do this. And this player needs to be in a very particular position in a chunk, otherwise it doesn't work and stuff. It's actually rather problematic. But now you can see there are creepers moving through here, and they're being turned into charged creepers. There are also mobs going through here, going to nether to get their skulls. So let me get over to the nether. So now I'm over in the nether, and it's obviously quite noisy over here because of all of the mobs coming through these portals. So the portals are actually sorted. We have one charged creeper portal and one other mobs portal. These mobs drop down here onto a hay bale, and then we can have charged creepers drop down here and blow them up, for which I need flint and steel. Oh, I have some in my inventory. So how this works is whenever I flick this trapdoor, we can start getting creepers through here and actually send them down to blow up. And when you right click a creeper with flint and steel, it becomes charged. So now we have a bunch of creepers which will blow up mobs below, and per charged creeper we get one skull. So I've just enabled that the carpet server right clicks for me. So if we go down here in FreeCam, we can see the creepers going down, and sometimes they die because this setup definitely isn't perfect, but whenever they do blow up the mobs, we get a skull each time. Oh, and we can also sometimes have problems over here. What's happening? Oh, I'm out of flint and steel. Okay. So this is another interesting problem that can arise when running this farm. As you can see, all of the creepers are not charged anymore, but it is actually thundering outside. So let's take a look at what's happening there. So as you can see, there is a ton of these horse traps spawning right now. And this usually doesn't happen because horse traps only spawn when this lightning strikes an entity. But the problem is that all of these bats that are flying around here may fly over this platform, and when they get struck, they spawn a first horse, and after that, that horse can be struck by lightning and so forth, which keeps up this cycle of a ton of horses. But this is actually a rather funny thing because you can fly through here and just open all of these horse traps at once, and when they shoot at you, they start shooting at each other. So they kind of self-destruct, and it's very bad for your frame rate because they're all wearing equipment and stuff. It's very funny to see, in my opinion. Also, another important thing about the RNG grid is that if we now sleep at the right time again, then the thunder and weather manipulator also get reset to the proper time, which makes this whole contraption actually useful. So sleep and then reset to the proper time still. So to end off this episode, let's take a ride on our subscriber gallery, and let's make a time lapse out of it because it's very, very long by now. Alright, I forgot about this. I had an accident while I had the thunder grid on, which can obviously lead to trouble. Oh my god. Wow. I'm just going to leave that there and act like nothing happened. An armor stand. So as you might have been able to see, some people had their armor stands actually customized, because you can just ask for that in the comments and I'll give you a special armor stand. So I had a whole row of them back here somewhere. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah. Over here there are a bunch of people asked for creeper heads. And there was this one person who asked for very specific dye colors on their armor set, and I'll show that they're actually correct. This is this, and the dye color that was asked of the boots is actually impossible to create, so I just looked at the color and created something that was alright. And they wanted the skeleton skull to be enchanted, but that's invisible, so it doesn't really matter. So if you want your armor stand to be customized, you can just ask for it in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe if you want to be on the subscriber gallery. Thanks for watching everyone. Have a great day. Bye bye.